You run your tongue along your gum line before bed, the way you always do, and something feels different tonight. Your teeth look just a little longer than they used to. Not dramatically, just enough that you notice it under the bathroom light. You brush twice a day. You floss most nights. You even switched to a softer toothbrush a while back because someone told you that would help. And yet here you are, staring at a gum line that keeps pulling back a little more every year, no matter what you do. You probably think this comes down to brushing too hard. Or maybe it's just what happens as you get older, something you can't really stop. But if that were the whole story, switching to a softer brush would have already solved it. So maybe the real problem isn't the one you've been fighting this whole time. Stick with me for a few minutes and you'll see what's likely actually happening underneath the surface. The small signs most people miss completely, and a few things you can start doing differently before the recession goes any further. Let's start with the part that's easiest to see. If the bristles on your toothbrush look flattened and splayed out after just a few weeks, that's usually a sign you're pressing harder than you think, especially if you brush in a fast back and forth motion instead of small circles. That kind of pressure doesn't just wear down enamel over time. It can also push against the thin band of gum tissue that sits right at the base of your teeth, gradually wearing it thinner in the exact spots you scrub the hardest. That's often why recession shows up first on the outer surface of your canines and premolars, the teeth that get the most pressure from a brush moving side to side. If you switch to a soft bristle brush, hold it more like a pencil than a fist, and let the bristles do the work instead of your arm. You're already removing one source of pressure your gums have been dealing with for years. But here's where things get interesting, because plenty of people who brush gently are still watching their gums recede. If brushing pressure explained everything, this wouldn't happen. There's a second, less obvious source of pressure that has nothing to do with your toothbrush at all, and it happens while you're asleep. Grinding or clenching your teeth at night puts repeated force directly into the roots and the surrounding bone. And over months and years, that pressure can contribute to the gum tissue pulling away in the same way constant friction wears down anything else. Some people never realize they grind their teeth because it happens while they're unconscious, and the only clue is a partner mentioning the sound or waking up with a sore jaw. If your dentist has ever mentioned worn edges on your teeth, that's often the first hint this is part of your story too. If this is already making your gums make a little more sense, go ahead and subscribe. We break down the changes people notice in their mouths after 40 without turning everything into complicated dental jargon, so you'll actually understand what's happening instead of just being told to brush more. Now let's go one layer deeper, because pressure from a toothbrush or a grinding habit is really only part of the picture, and it's not even the part your dentist worries about most. Underneath your gum line, there's a constant, quiet interaction happening between your tissue and the bacteria that live in your mouth. Think of your mouth as having its own ecosystem, similar to a garden, where some bacteria are simply part of a balanced environment and others, when they build up unchecked, start to irritate the tissue around them. When plaque collects along and below the gum line and isn't cleared away, it can trigger a low-grade inflammatory response in the surrounding tissue. That inflammation doesn't always show up as obvious redness or bleeding. Sometimes it's quiet, sitting there for months, slowly breaking down the collagen fibers that anchor your gums in place. Think of collagen as the scaffolding holding that tissue where it belongs. When that scaffolding is under constant low-level stress from inflammation, the tissue can start to shift and pull back even in people who brush carefully and never press too hard. This is also where a lot of people get surprised, because they assume gum problems only happen if you're clearly neglecting your teeth. But you can be doing everything that looks right on the surface and still have an imbalance happening below it, simply because brushing removes buildup on the surfaces you can reach. It doesn't automatically reach every pocket and every alley along the gum line, and it doesn't do much to influence the broader bacterial environment inside your mouth. That's one of the reasons some people have started paying closer attention to what's happening with the bacteria in their mouths, not just what they can physically scrub away. It's part of why oral probiotics have gotten more attention lately, the idea being that supporting a healthier balance of bacteria in your mouth might work alongside brushing and flossing rather than replacing them. One option in that category is called ProDentim, a daily oral probiotic supplement designed to support the environment around your teeth and gums. It isn't a treatment, and it isn't a substitute for brushing, flossing, or seeing your dentist regularly. But if the idea of supporting your mouth from the inside, in addition to what you already do on the outside, sounds worth looking into, I've put the ProDentim information in the description below this video. Take a look and decide for yourself whether it's something that fits into your own routine. Now, because bacteria are only part of the picture, there's one more everyday habit worth mentioning, because it surprises a lot of people. Rinsing with a strong alcohol-based mouthwash right after brushing can actually work against you. Alcohol-based rinses can be drying, and a dry mouth produces less saliva, which matters more than most people realize. Think of saliva as your mouth's built-in rinse, constantly washing away food particles and helping neutralize acid. When that natural rinse slows down, whether from a harsh mouthwash, certain medications, or simply getting older, bacteria and acid have more time sitting against your gum line instead of being cleared away. If your mouth tends to feel dry, especially first thing in the morning, that's worth paying attention to, and a gentler, alcohol-free rinse can make more of a difference than people expect. So where does that leave you practically? Start by watching your brushing pressure and switching to small circular motions if you haven't already. Pay attention to whether you wake up with a sore jaw or worn tooth edges, since that can point toward nighttime grinding worth mentioning to your dentist. Keep an eye on dryness in your mouth, particularly in the morning, and consider a gentler rinse if that sounds familiar. None of these changes are dramatic, and none of them require you to overhaul your entire routine overnight. They're simply about addressing the sources of stress on your gums, instead of just brushing harder in response to a problem that brushing alone can't fix. It's also worth saying clearly that recession itself is common, and for most people, something to manage rather than panic over. But there are certain signs that do call for a dentist's evaluation rather than waiting it out, including persistent pain, gums that bleed regularly and don't improve, visible swelling, any pus near the gum line, or a tooth that starts to feel loose. Those symptoms can point to something beyond ordinary wear and are worth having checked rather than guessing about. If you've noticed this happening with your own gums, tell me what you noticed first, whether it was sensitivity to cold, occasional bleeding, or your teeth simply starting to look a little longer than they used to. I'm curious how many of you caught it the same way I described at the start. When you put all of this together, the real takeaway isn't that you need to brush harder or buy a stronger mouthwash. It's that gum recession is usually the result of several small sources of stress working on the same tissue at once, from pressure to inflammation to a mouth that isn't staying as moist and balanced as it used to. Once you see it that way, the goal shifts from scrubbing harder to actually reducing the pressure your gums are under, from every direction, not just the one you can see in the mirror. Small, consistent changes tend to matter far more here than anything drastic. Adjust your brushing pressure, keep an eye on nighttime grinding, and pay attention to dryness, and you're already addressing the sources that matter most. There's no need to panic about a receding gum line, but there is good reason to understand it instead of just fighting it blindly. And if your gums have also been bleeding when you brush, that's actually a different story worth understanding on its own. So stick around for the next video, because bleeding gums can be telling you something recession alone doesn't.